Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the new Western World podcast about the town Too Tough to Die. Tales of Old Tombstone is now on the air. Your host is Stuart Rosebrook, along with Bob Boze Bell, and they have many guests that will entertain you, inform you, make you laugh, make you smile, and probably give you something to talk about. You'll find it one of the best. And it's brought to you by Tombstone Monument Ranch. That's right, Tombstone Monument Ranch, right in Tombstone, Arizona, and the True Ranch Collection. The program is ready. Are you ready? Here we go.
As I walked out in the streets of Laredo, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I spied a poor cowboy wrapped up in white linen, wrapped up in white linen and cold as the clay. Oh, beat the drum slowly and play the fife lowly, play the dead march as you carry me along. Take me to the green valley and lay the sod o'er me, for I'm a young cowboy and know I've done wrong.
This is Stuart Rosebrook with Tales of Old Tombstone. This is our premiere episode. We are broadcasting today from the White Stallion Ranch in Tucson, Arizona, the historic and legendary ranch of the Old West, where men and women come from around the world to discover their Western self and learn how to ride and learn how to live the cowboy way. And our guest today is the proprietor and owner of the White Stallion Ranch, Russell True. Russell, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's great to be there. Of course, ironically, I'm not there. I'm at the Dude Ranch Conference in Fort Worth, Texas.
Well, I understand, Russell, we are going to have about 72-degree weather today, and it was a beautiful morning in the 30s. Tell us a little bit about that Texas sunshine.
Well, you were rubbing salt in it. I mean, we're in Fort Worth, and the convention is, of course, great, and seeing the ranchers is always something we all look forward to every year. But it's a bit cold. It's been running in the teens, and the hotel lobby heat isn't working, even though this is a downtown upscale Hilton, and so I got 4 layers of clothes on, and it makes me want to be home.
Well, I think, Russell, the Tales of the Old West, we like to joke when we're on family vacations, is if something doesn't really happen to you, you don't have good stories. So everyone's gonna have some good stories about Fort Worth in 2024 for many years.
Oh yeah, that's what we're saying. This is one that'll be talked about for a while.
Well, we're going to talk about some stories today about Tombstone and Tucson, and one of the things I've always been interested in is, and maybe a little bit jealous, Russell, is that I grew up in the city of Los Angeles and North Hollywood, and when we met and I heard a little bit about your story, I thought, wow, Russell had some incredible parents. They were courageous. Tell me a little bit about how a young boy like yourself came to be the owner of a ranch in Arizona.
Well, I always say I picked my parents really well. The summary of their story is my dad was born in Wyoming, raised in Montana. My mother lived her whole life in Colorado, except for a couple of years of college. And they were tired of snow and cold, and they'd had it. And one day my dad came home to a late spring blizzard in Denver, and he said, "That's it, I've had it." He got on a plane that night and flew to Tucson and started looking for his new path forward, because the business they were in didn't exist in Arizona, still doesn't. So they had to reinvent themselves, and he looked at everything, and somehow he looked at 4 dude ranches that were for sale of the 24 in Tucson at the time. He settled on White Stallion, the least well-known, most run-down, but felt it had the most future, which panned out to be true because it's the only one still there as a dude ranch, and had to talk my mother into it. And 5 years old, I'm 5 years old, they bought a dude ranch, and the rest of my life has been there.
So what was that for you? You were born and raised up in Colorado. Had you ever spent much time in the desert before that, or your parents' family was up in the Rocky Mountains and Rocky Mountain West? What do you think about when your car rolled into this saguaro-studded desert down here in Tucson?
I had no other than we came down as guests for a week when my dad was having to talk my mom into buying the ranch. And so other than that, I'd never been to Arizona. I'd never been to the desert, at least not in my memory. And so it was all new, but it was a big adventure. We were living in the city, very traditional life. And here we get to look at these pretty spectacular mountain views and the cactus. And, for a kid, that's less important than, horses and cows and wide open spaces and places to run and, the freedom that I probably exceeded the limits enjoying. And it just was a giant adventure.
So I'm guessing, Russell, you and I are about the same age. I'm going to be 61 this year. And if you were 5, your family moved down here in the mid to late 60s. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm a little older, 65.
Uh-huh.
They bought the ranch in September of 65, opened it in October 1st of 65, and there was no home for us to live in. Our pool room in the lodge is where the prior owners lived, so they had to build a house for us. So my mother was pregnant with my brother, and we stayed in Denver until the house was finished in March of 66.
Well, so you got to move down here. Did you finish your school year up in Colorado, or did you guys come down here and move down here in the spring before the heat came on?
Yeah, no, we moved down early March, and I was in kindergarten, which public schools didn't offer. So I did part of the year in Denver and part of the year in Tucson, and entered Marana School and did all 12 years there.
So, I'm thinking a little bit about being at 6 years old and coming out to Arizona about that age to up at the Orem Ranch. And one of the things when you're a little guy out on a ranch and a new experience, there had to have been some great cowboys and vaqueros out here and also a string of horses. Did your mom and dad put you to work out here and learning how to be a little buckaroo and learn the ranch trade early on?
They didn't. I think one of the, whether it was purposeful or accidental, one of the things that I think was really brilliant, our parents never pushed us to do anything. We wanted to work and make a little money, and we did, but we weren't pushed toward the horses or away from the horses or anything else. We meaning my brother and I, we just kind of found our own way, and we were given a lot of freedom in that regard, and so we were pulled toward it, not pushed.
So here we are, and so how long, Alan, did you find yourself during college and after that you came back here to run the ranch with your parents? How long have you been actually working as an operator of the White Stallion Ranch?
So I went to University of Arizona in Tucson, and I commuted because I just was I just loved being there and meeting the guests and doing the whole thing. So I really didn't have a college experience. It was like my job. I went to college class and then came home and did my dude range thing. So senior year of college, I ran our corral, and the day I graduated, I went to work full time at the ranch, and I've never looked back. So it's really with some other things that I've done just as, nonprofits or something else. I've just been a dude ranger my entire life.
So growing up here in Tucson, obviously not too far from the old Tucson studios, High Chaparral is being produced while you're a boy. Many of the great Western movies and commercials are being produced just beyond your backyard. And just down the road is Tombstone, Arizona. When, as a boy and a young man, did you start to become aware of how influential Tucson and Tombstone were to our Western history, but also inspiring many of your guests to come to Tucson?
Well, Tucson first. There's 13 feature films that have been shot at the ranch, probably the majority before our time there, lots in the 40s and 50s. But certainly some of them were filmed while we were there. And then High Chaparral was filmed 68 to 72, often on the ranch. So they were on our ranch all the time. And as a little boy, if we had friends or family in, they'd want to go watch the filming. And I learned very quickly as a kid that watching filming is the most boring thing. I mean, paint drying is more exciting. You know, they shoot out a sequence, setup time is but I learned very quickly that Tucson, old Tucson, and our fabulous backdrops and classic saguaro studded views, it was a big deal. Tombstone came along a little later for me, but, certainly I think Tombstone was bigger in the public consciousness when I was a kid than it is now. So we all knew how big a deal it was.
Let me ask you this. Now, did your parents always run some cattle, always keep some cattle on the ranch here?
They did. So the prior owners were Massachusetts folks who'd been staying at a ranch across the hill, Lazy K, and bought the ranch. They didn't want anything to do with the cattle, so they leased that part of the ranch out, and my dad immediately ceased the lease and took that back over. And, we're a small-scale cattle outfit, but we've always done that.
So what brought you to Tombstone? I think one of the things that's interesting about the last 30 years in Western popular culture is the new fascination with Tombstone. I mean, we know that Tombstone and the story of the Earps and Doc Holliday and the Cowboys have been part of our popular Western culture for a long time, but we just did a big celebration on the 30th anniversary of Tombstone. But you have been a entrepreneur in Tombstone with the Monument Ranch for, is it a decade? How long have you been in Tombstone, Russell, and what brought you to expand your operations down to the Monument Ranch?
It's just one of those stories where you call it fate or call it circumstance, whatever. I had been down to Tombstone Monument Ranch, which is, of course, it was built in 2009 by a German with a vision and a dream on a 1880, one of the original ranches in that area, cattle ranch that had been split up, and he built it, and I went down as part of the Dude Rangers Association to inspect it. So I was really familiar. I got those are detailed tours and pretty tough exams, so to speak. So I knew the ranch, and then he lost it to the folks who'd sold it to him. It's a bit complex, but as it works out, without my knowledge, they took it back, didn't know them, and they call us and say, hey, we got your name and you do dude ranching, and we don't want to. They were too smart to want to get into the dude ranch business. And so they said, please come down and buy this thing. So I took a friend, Jay Wells, down and just kind of for his entertainment more than anything else. And we went down, and kind of a long story short, we ended up buying it with a few partners, and we bought it right and hit the ground running hard. And we really have enjoyed that ranch and Tombstone far more than I even would have imagined. So
tell me a little bit more about the Tombstone Monument Ranch. And I heard last night from many of your guests here at the White Stallion about their great rides out into the Saguaro National Park and their all-day rides. But I also heard from one of your guests that she's been down there and she got to ride from the Monument Ranch into Tombstone. Tell me a little bit about the size of how many guests you regularly have, and some of the adventures, because I know you're still running cattle down there as well. Is that right?
So in the family that homesteaded the ranch was called Trapman, and it quickly, through marriage became the Escaples, which are a huge family name in the Tombstone area. And his third or fourth generation, aging out in the 90s, sold it to six people who split it up, and the Dude Ranch was built and then of course repossessed, and the cattle ranch that surrounded it came available, and we essentially put the ranch back together. So we run the cows, and we basically got the original 1880s ranch put back together. And so cattle, my wife was just down there. It was a little chilly there too, and did a mini roundup for about 4 days. We do traditional spring and fall. So the cattle part of that experience is big. They're real, it's a real cow outfit. It's not a big one. It's about 12,000 acres. And we run criollo cattle, which is a whole different podcast, but they're Spanish cattle, look a bit like Corrientes or Longhorns. And so that's part of it. Just the feel of being in the Old West and the history. Our saloon is just as cool as a saloon can be. And, you can look down through the plexiglass and see the root cellar / escape tunnel because the Apaches were still active in the area in 1880. We do shooting, archery. We ride to Tombstone, as you said. It's about 2.5, 3 miles into the town. But we also do the history ride where they ride through mines and petroglyphs and it's miner's cabin. And, the history is so extensive in that area, not just Wyatt Earp, there's a lot of stuff that happened. And so the ranch really embraces all that. When you're in the rooms, you feel it. And and the riding's varied because the country is varied. So we love it down there.
Well, your elevation there at, in Tombstone's closer to, was it 4,500 feet in the Chihuahuan?
Yeah, I think the
Chihuahuan
ranch
desert
headquarters are at 43. So yeah, it runs from maybe a little bit around 4,000 to 5,000.
Well, you have me sold, Russell. I'm eager to get down there and walk the ground of that Monument Ranch and get out on the trail. I think that you must have some guests that have come from all over the world and have really discovered the Old West there of Cochise County out at the Monument Ranch.
We do. That's our history at White Stallion, which we take the same approach to the ranches, and we've always had an international effort. We market hard, and we actually, it just, this is our life as much as our business, and it makes our life more interesting to have people from all over the world, and it makes our guest experience more interesting to have people from all over the world. So it's always been something that has been a real feature of what we do.
Someone asked me last night, you've probably seen it rise and fall over the years with Western popular culture. Have you noticed the Yellowstone effect the last 5 years in the dude ranching business as you've expanded from Arizona to Montana?
Well, I think it's undoubted. It's without doubt that Yellowstone has had a big impact. And, people talk a lot about it. And some even say, it was so intriguing I had to come out west and see it for myself. I think one of the things about Yellowstone that has been really a driving force is that the original, of course, Yellowstone with Costner, et cetera, it's a modern day Western. And so people feel like, wow, I don't have to go back in time to get this experience. The West is still kind of wild, and it's still kind of big and open, and cows and cowboys and cowgirls and all this stuff. So I think it's had it's not city slickers, which transformed dude ranching, which is ironic because it wasn't even a dude ranch. But yeah, Yellowstone has been big. And, we just shot a non-scripted reality show at our ranch in Montana, Circle Block. And they said, hey, we want to be part of Yellowstone. This is a phenomenon. And it is.
Well, I think that's really interesting. And as you're talking about it, as I was talking to your guests last night at the White Stallion, is they're like, are you coming out to watch our rodeo today? And of course, we're going to make sure that we are finished recording and going to go out and watch the rodeo. Many of the ladies were telling us about their quadrille that they're getting ready to participate in. But I think that's interesting about Yellowstone is that while it's a big drama, is that in the middle of Yellowstone, Taylor Sheridan regularly shows the cowboys working their horses, working their cattle, training, and the day-to-day life of ranching. And I think that people can see themselves in that, and you make those dreams come true at your dude ranches. And I think that's one of the things we're going to continue to talk about on our shows helping people bring that adventure and their dream come true. I met a woman last night who's been coming here 40 years. I think maybe, Russell, I want you to share a little story about bringing those dreams true to some of the folks that come out here and they come out year after year. What's the magic there that you bring to people?
Well, maybe it's hard for me to answer. I want to go back just for a second to Yellowstone. People ask me, and Taylor Sheridan, I think it was Bob Boze Bell, said to me, this guy's a genius. He's a one-man writing factory. I'm misquoting him, but, if Bob says that, I'm listening. And, people ask me all the time, well, what do you think about Yellowstone? Do you watch? And I say, absolutely. And they said, well, what do you think? And I said, it's absurdity wrapped in reality. And they said, what does that mean? I said, well, going to the train station and some of these automatic gunfights are not probably all that realistic, but these are real cowboys riding real horses. I mean, Lloyd or whatever his name is on the show, he's floated teeth at the Tombstone Monument Ranch for us. He's a real deal cowboy. Taylor is a real deal guy. And he's speaking when some of those characters speak, they speak to us because they speak for us. And a lot of that writing is really on target. And, if we're not in some gunfight, it's real. And we love that. And so I think that leads to my answer. It's about authenticity, which is a big word. I saw it was one of the two biggest words, in usage in some sort of study last year in the year of 23. And so maybe it's overused, but the concept, I think, as virtual this and virtual that and this and that and AI starts to emerge, people like the real experiences. And so that's what I think we do very, very well at Dude Ranch is I don't think we're unique in that regard. I think, hats off to my colleagues in Dude Ranching. We get people out into real country on real horses, doing real things, taking real risks and having experiences they're going to remember forever, because it wasn't contrived.
Well, Russell, thank you very much. And we may be talking about the white stallion effect and bringing the Russell True and your family bringing the real West to people from around the world out here in Arizona and across the West. Russell, I want to thank you for being the guest on our first episode of Tales of Old Tombstone. And I look forward to next time we are going to talk about Tombstone and the Old West together.
Well, thanks for including me. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Russell, for that wonderful, wonderful start to the program and for bringing along some of your old cowboy music. We'll probably hear more from time to time. I'm Stan Husted, leader of the What It Takes Radio Company, and we have the privilege and the pleasure of producing this fine program, and we're glad that you are now tuned in. And we'd like to encourage you to also visit one of our partners in this enterprise, in this adventure. It is the Tombstone Epitaph. That's the newspaper for the town that was too tough to die, and it has a new incarnation. Let me introduce you to Mark Boardman, and once again, the Tombstone Epitaph.
A stagecoach robbery in Montana brings out the vigilantes who are going to serve their own kind of justice, even towards a sheriff. And that's the lead story in the March 2024 Tombstone Epitaph. Also, the terror of San Bernardino County, a photo spread on Wild Bill Hickok, and the first cattle drive of the legendary 101 Ranch. The Tombstone Epitaph, the legendary newspaper of the Old West. For information and subscriptions, tombstoneepitaph.com.
And we thank you for being with us on our premiere episode. And like every new adventure, we have people we should thank because they help make it possible. So here we go, Russell True and the outstanding team of cowboys and cowgirls at White Stallion Ranch right here in Tucson. And then the Tombstone Monument Ranch, it's in Tombstone, and the True Ranch Collection. From Tempe, Arizona, Keith B. Woods of KB Woods PR. From Poplar Grove, Indiana, Mark Boardman, the editor of the Tombstone Epitaph. From Phoenix, Arizona, the 66 Kid and Dan Harshberger, our podcast logo designer. And the good folks in Carolina who are part of What It Takes Radio. And we thank you for tuning in this week. We will be back next week from Prescott and Cave Creek, Arizona, with another thrilling episode of Tales of Old Tombstone. And Tales of Old Tombstone, we begin. It's a weekly podcast brought to you by the 66 Kids and a Quo Vadis Communications production in association with Tombstone Monument Ranch and the True Ranch Collection.